Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria, to some, a modern-day Robin Hood. To others, the most dangerous man alive. A man who built an empire worth billions, controlled the world's cocaine supply, and brought both Colombia and the United States into a war they could never forget. But behind the legend is a story of ambition, power, and an inevitable fall from grace. Before we dive in, hit subscribe, drop a like, and comment "I'm ready" below, because what you're about to hear will shock you. Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria was born on December 1st, 1949, in the small town of Rio Negro, Colombia, but his real story begins in the bustling streets of Medellin, where he grew up. His father, Abel, was a humble farmer, working the soil under the hot Colombian sun. His mother, Hermilda, was a school teacher, a strict but loving woman who dreamed her son would live an honest life. But young Pablo, he was different. Even as a boy, he wasn't satisfied with ordinary. While other kids played soccer in the streets, Pablo was already thinking about how to get ahead. Ambition burned in him, and patience was never his strength. As a teenager, he began testing the waters of crime. He stole tombstones from graveyards, scraped off the names, and resold them to smugglers. He dabbled in smuggling stereo equipment from Panama, and even made money selling fake lottery tickets. These weren't the crimes of a hardened criminal, yet. They were the first steps of a boy who believed rules were made for other people. He had one goal: to be rich. Not just comfortable, not just successful. No, Pablo wanted power and wealth on a scale no one could ignore. And for him, morality was negotiable. By his early 20s, he had found the perfect opportunity. The 1970s had arrived, a time when a new drug was exploding in popularity across the United States: cocaine. Demand was sky high, the profits unimaginable. While others saw a dangerous, illegal business, Pablo saw a gold mine. He understood the logistics, the routes, the bribes needed to keep it all moving. This was more than a business to him. It was his ticket to becoming one of the most powerful men in the world. And with that, the seeds of the Medellin cartel were planted. Escobar joined forces with other traffickers, and together, they formed the Medellin cartel. Planes stuffed with cocaine flew from hidden airstrips in Colombia to Miami. Boats carried shipments across the Caribbean. Smuggling tunnels bribed airport officials. Nothing was off limits. At the height of its power, the Medellin cartel moved 15 tons of cocaine every single day. That's over $420 million a week. Pablo wasn't just a criminal, he was a businessman. His product was pure, his prices unbeatable, his delivery guaranteed. But to protect it all, he created a rule: plata o plomo. Silver or lead, take the bribe or take the bullet. If this story has you hooked, smash the like button. It tells YouTube you want more deep dives like this. Escobar poured money into the poor neighborhoods of Medellin. He built housing projects, soccer fields, and schools. Families who had nothing suddenly had homes. Kids who had no place to play now had a field. To the poor, he was a savior. They called him the Robin Hood of Medellin. In 1982, Escobar entered politics. He won a seat in Colombia's Congress, but fame brought attention, and attention brought questions. Journalists exposed his criminal past. Under pressure, he resigned. The humiliation stung. From that moment, Escobar gave up on politics and embraced war. By the mid-1980s, the world had started closing in on Pablo Escobar. Colombia had just signed an extradition treaty with the United States, a nightmare for drug lords. In the eyes of the D, this treaty was a ticket to finally bring Escobar to an American courtroom and lock him away for life. But for Escobar, it was a death sentence. He made his position clear in a statement that would be remembered for decades. "I would rather have a grave in Colombia than a cell in the United States." From that moment on, Escobar wasn't just defending his empire, he was waging war. And he would fight that war with pure terror. Judges, politicians, journalists. One by one, they were assassinated. No one was untouchable. In November 1989, he committed one of the deadliest acts of his campaign, ordering the bombing of Avianca Flight 203. The target, a presidential candidate who threatened his empire. The result, 110 innocent men, women, and children lost their lives in the sky. Then came the car bombs. Bogota, Medellin. City streets became battlefields. The explosions didn't just kill. They spread a message. Pablo Escobar controlled life and death in Colombia. The violence grew so extreme, the United States could no longer stand on the sidelines. DEA agents, intelligence operatives, and military advisors poured into Colombia. The hunt for Pablo Escobar had begun, and it would become one of the most expensive, relentless manhunts in history. Tell me in the comments. Was Escobar a brilliant strategist who outsmarted the world? Or just a ruthless killer who left nothing but chaos behind? By 1991, after years of bloodshed, Pablo Escobar shocked the world. He offered to surrender. But as with everything in his life, there was a catch. Escobar would turn himself in, but only on one condition. He would choose the prison. He would design it. He would control it. The Colombian government, desperate to end the chaos, agreed. And so, La Catedral was born, but this was no ordinary prison. Behind its high walls stood a paradise, a private soccer field where Escobar played matches with friends and even professional players, a bar stocked with the finest liquor, a jacuzzi, a giant billiards room. Rumors even spoke of a hidden waterfall cascading down into the mountain air. The guards, all handpicked by Escobar himself. Inside La Catedral, he wasn't a prisoner, he was king. From this so-called prison, Escobar still ran the Medellin cartel. Orders went out, shipments moved, enemies disappeared. The violence didn't stop, it simply relocated. But eventually, whispers began to reach the government. Murders were being committed inside La Catedral. Even cartel rivals were lured there, never to leave. When authorities finally decided to move him to a real prison, Escobar made his move. One rainy night, while the guards, his own guards, looked the other way, Pablo Escobar slipped into the mountains. And once again, the most wanted man in the world was free. For 16 relentless months. The Colombian police, with the full backing of U.S. intelligence and the DEA, scoured every corner of the country. Safe houses were raided, cartel members were captured or killed. Slowly, the empire of Pablo Escobar began to crumble. By late 1993, Escobar was a shadow of the man he once was. Most of his allies were gone, his fortune was dwindling, and yet, he remained untouchable until December 2nd, just one day after celebrating his 44th birthday. A phone call he made to his son was traced. The signal led authorities to a quiet neighborhood in Medellin. The police moved in. Escobar, realizing the net had closed around him, ran to the rooftops, leaping from one building to another in a desperate attempt to escape. Bullets tore through the air. The rooftop became a battlefield, and then it was over. Pablo Escobar lay dead on the red tiles of that rooftop. Some say the police bullets ended his life. Others, including his own family, believe that in those final moments, Escobar pressed the gun to his ear and pulled the trigger himself, choosing death on his own terms. The reign of the king of cocaine was finished, but his legend was just beginning. If you want, I can now blend this ending into a powerful closing segment that reflects on his legacy, while also giving you a natural point to push for likes, comments, and subscriptions. Pablo Escobar left behind far more than mountains of cash and endless kilos of cocaine. He left a country scarred, a nation that still carries the weight of his violence decades later. Streets that once echoed with the laughter of children became battlefields. Families were torn apart, trust in the government, in law, in justice, shattered. And yet, not everyone remembers him as a monster. In the poorest barrios of Medellin, there are still those who speak his name with respect. The man who built their homes, who gave their children soccer fields, who made them feel seen in a world that ignored them. But for thousands more, Escobar was no hero. He was a murderer, a man whose ambition drowned a country in blood. His life stands as a warning. Power taken through violence will always be paid for. In violence, and in the end, every empire built on blood eventually falls. If you made it this far, you're one of the rare people who truly loves history's untold stories. So, subscribe, share this with a friend, and drop a comment. Who should we cover next? Because some stories are too powerful to be forgotten.